My childhood, that's the chapter that we are going to study today, and this is part of the Beehive textbook, which is the textbook for CBSE class 9 students for English. And this is basically from the autobiography of former President of India, the late APJ Abdul Kalam, right? This is the place where he actually talks about his childhood, and it's an extremely inspirational story. In fact, on Study with Sudhir, you would find this as part of the Telangana first year intermediate, that's 11th class syllabus. We had done the video earlier this year, and we had done it in both English and Telugu combined for students of Telangana first year intermediate, that's 11th class. Now this story is a slightly different part of my childhood, and talks about his growing up years in the town of Rameshwaram, which, if you know the geography of India, it's one of the southernmost towns of India, and just a little distance away from Rameshwaram is a place called Dhanushkodi, which is the tip. From there you get over to Sri Lanka. So in that sense, historically very important. There is also a famous temple of Rameshwaram, and it's a major pilgrimage center, and that's where Abdul Kalam grew up, right? So I was born into a middle class Tamil family in the island town of Rameshwaram in the erstwhile Madras state. Erstwhile means a time earlier on, and earlier Tamil Nadu, before the reorganization of states took place in the year 1956. This was known as Madras state or Madras presidency. The modern day Tamil Nadu was referred to as Madras state, and of course Madras itself the name has been changed to Chennai now. My father, Jainulabdin, had neither much formal education nor much wealth, but despite these disadvantages, he possessed great innate wisdom and a true generosity of spirit. You need to know these phrases, because if the question comes, and these are the kind of questions you may possibly get, as to what were the qualities of his father that Abdul Kalam greatly admired. So you need to know that he had great innate wisdom. Now innate essentially is basically inborn. You are basically having a lot of wisdom. You are basically a wise person, right? It's part of your personality. It's part of your nature. And a true generosity of spirit, that is a very giving kind of a nature. He had an ideal helpmate in my mother, whose name was Ashiamma. So these are the names of the parents of Abdul Kalam. Please write down the spellings a couple of times so that you don't make a spelling mistake with the name. Jainulabdin and Ashiamma, slightly complicated in the way the names are. He had an ideal helpmate in my mother Ashiamma. I do not recall the exact number of people she fed every day, but I am quite certain that far more outsiders ate with us than all the members of our own family put together. So he says, we had a lot of guests coming into our home almost on a regular basis, and they came and ate at our house, and these were much more than the members of our family. This was a joint family where Kalam lived in, with uncles and aunts and nephews and cousins, everyone. And even though it was a joint and a large family, many more people actually came and ate at their house. So in that sense, the couple Jainulabdin and Ashiamma was known for its hospitality, right? I was one of the many children, a short boy with rather undistinguished looks. Undistinguished looks essentially means that he was not a boy you would take a second look at, in the sense that he was not particularly a good looking boy who was known for his facial appearance and facial features, right? Born to tall and handsome parents. However, he believes that his parents were actually very good looking. He describes them as tall and handsome. We lived in our ancestral house, which was built in the middle of the 19th century. So it is an old house. It was a fairly large pakka house made of limestone and brick. Limestone is a basic material which was used to construct in those days, right, in the 19th century, on the Mosque Street in Rameshwaram town. My austere father, now austere essentially means someone who follows a very simple way of living, but at the same time very strict with the way you would actually spend money. Be very careful about your finances. He used to avoid all inessential comforts and luxuries. So he is not someone who would kind of splurge on himself, spend unnecessarily on himself or on his family. However, all necessities are provided for. So you would not kind of spend on luxuries. However, you would kind of ensure that all the necessary things were taken care of, right? In terms of food, medicine or clothes. In fact, I would say mine was a very secure childhood, both materially and emotionally. So Kalam says it was a good childhood. We were taken good care of. We would not splurge or spend money unnecessarily. We were not spendthrifts, but at the same time, earlier he says undistinguished look. So it also shows what Kalam actually thought of himself in terms of his physical appearance. Now the Second World War broke out in 1939, as you know, when I was about 8 years old. So that was his age when the Second World War broke out. And he says, for reasons unknown, I have never been able to understand that there was a sudden demand for tamarind. Tamarind essentially means imli, right? And I used to collect the seeds and sell them to a provision store on the Mosque Street. So collect the seeds means there was a tamarind tree, as it is the case in many South Indian households. There is, if there is a space, there will always be a tamarind tree. It's considered good vibes in that sense. In the south you would find coconut trees, mango trees, tamarind trees and sometimes also neem trees. Now these are 4 trees which would generally be there in every house, right? Wherever there is some space to kind of grow trees. A day's collection would fetch me the princely sum of 1 anna. My brother-in-law Jalaluddin would tell me stories about the war, which I would later attempt to trace in the headlines in Dinamani. Dinamani is a very popular Tamil publication, newspaper, and he would also have a habit, apart from what his brother-in-law told him, he would also try to read about it in the newspaper. So it shows you a particular aspect, a particular facet of Kalam's personality, that he was someone who kind of aspired to be as aware and knowledgeable as possible, right? So it shows you a particular aspect of his personality at the age of 8. Our area, being isolated, was completely unaffected by the war, but soon India was forced to join the Allied forces and something like a state of emergency was declared. Now, Allied forces, remember, India was a colony of the British at that time, and Allied forces consisted of the UK, the USA and Russia during the Second World War against the other forces which were led by Hitler's Germany, right? Now, Anna essentially is an old Indian coin worth about 6 paise. So 1 anna equated to 6 paise at that time, right? And when he's saying the princely sum of 1 anna, essentially meaning that princely, it's almost like a prince. So it's a, if you got even 1 anna, you felt like a prince because it was seen as a very generous kind of an amount. So India was forced to join the Allied forces. Indian forces actually fought during World War II on behalf of the British, right? The first casualty came in the form of the suspension of the train halt at Rameshwaram. So that was, even though it was completely unconnected, right, with what was happening in the theatre of war, which was largely in Europe, but the train halt in Rameshwaram was for some reason stopped, discontinued, even though there is no direct connection with the war as it is. So what happened, and that had an effect on Kalam. Please note this, because this can be another question as to how did the war impact young Kalam. So if that kind of a question comes, this particular paragraph number 3 will be most critical, because you would be expected to cite instances from this paragraph. So what happened was, now since the train would not stop at Rameshwaram station, and as a result of which the newspapers could not be downloaded on Rameshwaram station when it stopped. So now the newspapers had to be bundled together and thrown out of the moving train on the Rameshwaram road between Rameshwaram and Dhanushkodi. So while the train was moving, the newspapers would be bundled and somebody would just throw it out on Rameshwaram road. Now that forced his cousin, now another cousin called Shamsuddin, who distributed newspapers in Rameshwaram, and he wanted a helping hand to be able to catch the bundle and to be able to help him in distributing the newspapers in Rameshwaram. So he asked for help from young Kalam. So, and that's how he started earning his first wages as in salary, earning money. And half a century later, that is 50 years later, Kalam says, I can still feel the surge of pride. He obviously felt very proud and good about having earned money at the age of 8 by doing what? doing hard work, earning money the right way. So it's a very inspirational lesson for anyone, that he was able to do it absolutely the right way. Now every child is born with some inherited characteristics, which is obviously the result of what your parents are, the kind of DNA you get, whatever their habits, their outlook, their mannerisms are, generally passes over to the children into a specific socio-economic and emotional environment and trained in certain ways by figures of authority. I inherited honesty and self-discipline from my father. From my mother, I inherited faith in goodness and deep kindness, and so did my 3 brothers and sister. So it was a family of 5 children, right? I had 3 close friends in my childhood, Ramanatha Shastri, Aravindan and Shiva Prakasan. So he's talking about his 3 childhood friends. Now all these 3 boys, if you notice, while Kalam comes from a Muslim family, these 3 come from Orthodox Brahmin families, as is obvious from the names. Now as children, however, they never felt the difference because of belonging to different religions, right? In fact, Ramanatha Shastri was the son of Pakshi Lakshmana Shastri, who was the high priest of the Rameshwaram temple, which I said it's a major temple town. And later on in life, he actually became the chief priest of Rameshwaram temple after his father. Arvind then went to the business of arranging transport for visiting pilgrims, because as I said, it's a pilgrim town. And Shiv Prakasan became a catering contractor for Southern Railways, that is providing food on the train, Rameshwaram being a major railway station as well. Now during the annual Sri Sita Rama Kalyanam ceremony, which happens during Ramanavami, which generally comes in the month of April, sometimes May, our family used to arrange boats. So the Muslim family of Jainuluddin and Kalam would actually arrange for boats with a special platform for carrying idols of Lord Rama from the temple to the marriage site. Ramanavami, the day the marriage also would be performed with Sita, situated in the middle of the pond called Ramatirtha, which was near our house. So you see the very secular nature of Rameshwaram. Hindus and Muslim families kind of living together, and the Muslim family of Kalam actually taking an active part in the ceremonies associated with Ramanavami and Sita Rama Kalyanam ceremony. Even from the Ramayana and the life of the Prophet, this line is extremely important, but the bedtime stories my mother and grandmother would tell the children in our family. So even though it was a Muslim family, they would tell about the life of the Prophet. They would also tell stories from the Ramayana to the children in the family. So even though a Muslim family, they were equally aware of Hindu mythology and Hindu stories like from the Ramayana. Now one day when I was in the 5th standard at the Rameshwaram elementary school, a new teacher came to our class. Now Kalam in class also used to wear what was the Muslim skull cap. So it kind of, the attention was drawn to him, saying that okay, he is a Muslim boy because he is wearing a skull cap. And he always sat with his best friend, who was Ramanatha Shastri. So the new teacher made Kalam go to the back bench because he wanted to keep a physical distance between a Hindu boy and a Muslim boy, between a Hindu student and a Muslim student. And he believed that Muslims were inferior, so he made Kalam go and sit on the back bench of the class. And he says that Ramanatha Shastri felt very sad. The image of him weeping when I shifted to the last row left a lasting impression on me. So the teacher has a communal mindset, whereas both Kalam and Ramanatha Shastri do not believe in any such differences, in any such walls being created between students, between children belonging to different religions, right? Again, very important. Could not stomach a Hindu priest's son sitting with a Muslim boy means could not tolerate, right? He did not approve of it, right? Downcast essentially means being sad or depressed. Now after school, the 2 boys, Ramanatha Shastri and Abdul Kalam, went and told their respective parents about the incident, and Lakshmana Shastri, the high priest or the chief priest of the Rameshwaram temple, summoned this teacher and told him not to spread the poison of communal intolerance and social inequalities in the minds of innocent children. And he says he should either apologize or quit the school and Rameshwaram itself. And the teacher fell in line and he said he apologized for it. The word conviction, that is another word which has been used out here, essentially means a strong opinion or belief, right? Point number 8. On the whole, but if you look at Rameshwaram in general, it was an orthodox town. There was a bit of rigidity when it came to segregation of different social groups. You are talking about both communal differences as well as social differences, even though Kalam's family or the family of Ramanatha Shastri did not quite believe in it. So he says, my science teacher, and you see the impact of the science teacher on young Kalam, who later on went on to become India's missile man, India's rocket man, right? India's nuclear man, as it were. So Shiva Subramania Iyer, again an orthodox Tamil Brahmin, he was some kind of a rebel, perhaps because he was a science teacher. So he believed in kind of challenging what is the obvious. And he said that, Kalam, I want you to develop so that you are on par with the highly educated people who are in the big cities. Please remember this quote as well. So he invited him home for a meal, but his wife did not approve of it. The fact that a Muslim boy was coming to a Tamil Brahmin household and she refused to serve him in her kitchen. But Shiva Subramania Iyer was not perturbed. Perturbed means he did not get angry or did not disapprove of what she did. What he did was he served Kalam with his own hands. Ritually pure kitchen essentially means that in orthodox Tamil Brahmin families, etc., Brahmin families, not just Tamil, you generally try to say that okay, this is the pure way of cooking, of serving, of eating everything, and everything has to be done in a particular way. So if someone else comes from outside who is not deemed to be pure or as pure as the Brahmins, it's generally frowned upon, it is generally not approved of. So this particular science teacher feeds Kalam himself and invites him again the following weekend. And then at that time Kalam is obviously hesitant because he's already seen how the teacher's wife has reacted, and he does not want to go through the same discomfiture, and also does not want the teacher's marital life get into any kind of trouble as a result of this invitation to the student. It's very obvious that the science teacher is very fond of young Kalam. So at that time the science teacher says, please remember this, once you decide to change the system, such problems will have to be confronted. The next weekend when he goes to have food at their house, Shiva Subramania Iyer's wife actually fed him, served him inside her kitchen. So there was a change within a week in his wife. Now then the Second World War was over, that is by 1945, and India's freedom was imminent. Indians will build their own India, declared Gandhiji. The whole country was filled with an unprecedented optimism. Unprecedented means something which has not happened before. Optimism means being very hopeful. I asked my father for permission to leave Rameshwaram and study at the district headquarters of Ramanathapuram. Ramanathapuram and Rameshwaram are pretty close to each other, both of them in South India, in the south of Tamil Nadu, then the Madras state. And he says, Abul, I know you will have to grow. Okay, go away to grow. Does the seagull not fly across the sun alone and without a nest? So he is talking about the seagull, and this is basically quoting from Khalil Gibran, who was a Lebanese American writer and poet, also referred to sometimes as a philosopher. And he says, he told Ashiamma that your children are not your children. This is an important quote in the context of what Abdul Kalam actually went on to do later on in his life. He said, your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of India. It also shows you, it gives you a glimpse of what the thinking of Jainuddin really was. And we have already been told earlier that he was inborn, he was basically a very wise kind of a person. He possessed great innate wisdom and a true generosity of spirit. So this particular instance of what he is saying now actually connects to what Kalam described his father as, that generosity of spirit, saying that they are not our children, they are the sons and daughters of India. Kalam is a son of India. He is not just a son of Jainuddin and Ashiamma. Also, the wisdom that you are able to kind of see the value of your son in the context of your motherland. So he quoted Khalil Gibran, to my hesitant mother, your children are not your children, they are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. So he's basically trying to say that let's not impose our thinking on our children. Let them find out themselves. They have their own ideas which they need to explore and grow into better human beings as the years progress. And that's what reflects in former President Abdul Kalam's thinking and whatever he achieved later on in life. Please look at the questions, and if you are able to kind of understand the story very well, look at the specific instances and remember it. For instance, where was Abdul Kalam's house? Mosque, Street, Rameshwaram. So you need to know the specific facts about the chapter, right? How did Abdul Kalam earn his first wages? Had he earned any money before that? So if you know those paragraphs, the paragraph number 3 in particular, you would be able to answer these kind of 1 mark, 2 mark questions very easily. So English can be a very high scoring subject for you, provided you read the chapters more than once, more than twice, mark the keywords, so that when you see it, you'll always remember, okay, this word on the left side of the page I had marked with my pencil, and the visual memory will always stay for you. So that's the way to do it. Also, these will be your keywords. Try not to change the words. Try to use the same words which have been used in the chapter, because most often they are the keywords, and the examiners, the evaluators look for those keywords in order to be able to award you marks in the examination. So I hope you found this story inspirational, motivating, and took the right lessons from former President Abdul Kalam's life. Thank you very much for watching. God bless you.